she was like, stop what you're doing. You need to build the foundation way better. And she was like, then you need to start again. And I just remember I gave her, I'm a Taurus, so I'm stubborn at some times, and I do believe it's good and bad at times. But in this moment, I was very stubborn, and I was like, no, like I'm not stopping.
You gotta win the day.
Welcome to Ruby's Roundtable podcast and show, where today I'm talking to you about how I'm building a clothing line from scratch without any degree in fashion or design, just taking it one day at a time and getting a lot of help along the way from mentors and designer friends. And so let's get into it, how I went from reselling to starting my own designs myself. I'm going to walk you through the ups and downs of reselling clothes to finding manufacturers, sizings, and working with models and all the things that goes into trying to design a clothing line from my perspective. So buckle up because we're about to go on a ride. Okay, so I quit the news in 2022 and I hit the ground running. I think it was September. I think I announced it. Maybe it was April when I released it of the following year. But I started reselling clothes because I've always wanted to get into fashion. Like if I wasn't singing or if I wasn't on the news, like I knew like I love clothes, and I always got a lot of compliments on my fashion. People even go down to calling me or reaching out to me and saying, hey, like, what do you think about this? And so I take compliments as, this is something that I could do and have my own line or my own look. And instead of like styling and looking at all these websites, I can just have my own. So I just took the leap of faith. But it all started really when I was on the news. It was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That was my first job on the news. And I remember my news director came in and she pulled me aside and was like, Ruby, she was like, you have it on the news. Like you can communicate, you can talk, but she was like, your style, we need to up it a little bit. We need more brighter colors, because at that time I was wearing like black, gray, nude, white, repeat. I had just got off the track team, like just got out of college, and I definitely was more on the tomboy side, wearing the track suits, like really dressing down. And then when we went out, like that's when I would put on clothes. But on the news, it's a total different story. They want you to wear solid bright colors so you can pop, whether you're on a green screen or in the field. Like they want to make sure that you're standing out. And at that time, like I didn't have any color in my wardrobe. So I remember she told me to go find a coworker of mine and ask her for help. And so she said, go to Amazon. So I took a night and I just went through Amazon, and I did find a lot of good finds. But in that moment, I said, Ruby, one day you're gonna create your own line, because I loved what I was finding, but at the same time, it's like I knew I wanted more. And I always go back to my fashion idol. Like I love watching the Nanny Fine, and I love her outfits. It's just super bold, super creative. Like you're gonna see her when she walk in the room. And some of it, they're patterns, they're loud color blocks, and then some of it very basic, but the way she styles it is just chef's kiss. So I would say that's probably my person that I look to when it comes to like how I design or how I want my designs to come off. Like love Nanny Fine. Go look at Nanny Fine Fashion on Pinterest if you need to have a reference. So let's start off by saying I started reselling clothes. I said, okay, let me find some vendors and figure out from there how I can flip it. And that's exactly what I did. When I first started reselling clothes, I got advice from my hairdresser actually on the steps to take to do it online. She was selling clothes in her hairdresser shop, and I was like, I want to do the same thing, but I want to do more like business casual, business professional. And so she just gave me the tools to like start. So I went on this website that she gave me, and I just found like all these different dresses, and I said, you know what, we're just gonna start with how we start. And I just know, like, I just dove right into it. I had some packaging. I went to Uline, found some red boxes, put my logo on it, and I said, you know what, we're just gonna put it out there. So the first round, it was a lot of family and friends who purchased from me because I really didn't have a build up to the clothing line. I just remember I quit my job and I said, you know what, we're just gonna go straight into it. And so it was really a lot of family and friends who purchased from me the first round. And so at that point, I think when I was doing my research, I just remember hearing another clothing line designer say the best thing for him when he started selling clothes was people that he didn't even know like was loving his brand and buying. So I always said, like, I love that my family and friends are supporting me, but I cannot wait to the day where it's like somebody in a whole nother part of the world just loving the pieces, and just women all over the world loving the pieces that I'm designing or selling at the time. But I just remember the second round that I did of dresses. Instead of just putting it out there, I said, you know what, this time let's invite some females that I know. And I was in my apartment at the time, like in the amenities area. I just set up some clothing racks and I invited some girls out just to see, like, okay, what do y'all like about these pieces? So instead of just dropping it on social media, I said, you know what, let me get some feedback from girls that I know and I like their style, or their style mimics like the look I was going for the business casual, business professional. So did that. And I remember one of the girls, she said, Ruby, I think when I want to buy from another female or just any women's clothing line, I want to make sure I can't find this on Fashion Nova or Pretty Little Thing or just a fast fashion website that you can find it. She said, I want to have one-of-a-kind pieces. Like, that's what's going to make me purchase. Because I think I asked her, like, what price range would you buy this dress for, or this blazer dress for? And she didn't really give me a price. She just said, if it's a one-of-a-kind piece and I can't find it anywhere, I'm buying it. It doesn't matter the price. And I remember she said, but if I know I can go on Fashion Nova and find it real quickly, or Amazon, like, I'm not buying it because it wasn't custom or it wasn't really true to the designer. So I will say, even though I was still reselling clothes at that time, I took that advice personal because it made sense. And one of my dresses that she tried on, it was very different. Even though it was from another vendor, it was something that I dug deep enough to where it was like 3 other dresses. She's like, you can find that somewhere else, but this dress, Ruby, like, you cannot find this dress anywhere else. And so I was like, okay, I love that advice. So did the second round. Again, it was more so family and friends who supported. And I remember after that second round, I said, ooh, we spent a lot of money on buying a lot of bulk and we did not sell it all. So at that point I said, okay, Ruby, we got to make money. We don't work on the news no more. Like, we have to make money in this process. So I just remember connecting with a mentor who also did business. And he was like, Ruby, what is the plan? Like, what is your 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan? And at that time, again, I just shot right into it. Like, I didn't have a plan. I just knew I had an idea of where to go find the vendors, how long it would take to get to me, and then shipping materials. Like, I knew like how much that would cost and how I can get it back out to the client or customer. And I had a website. So I really just had those basic things, but not the full plan of, okay, if you want to do this, how are you going to sustain and take it to another level each time? And so at that point, I remember my mentor at the time, I got a mentor from Score Charlotte. Score Charlotte is an organization in Charlotte that connects you with mentors who are either in the same business or they've retired and they're giving back to those who are rising entrepreneurs like myself. So I remember she telling me, Ruby, stop. She was like, stop what you're doing. You need to build the foundation way better than what you're doing right now. And she was like, then you need to start again. And I just remember I gave her, I'm a Taurus, so I'm stubborn at some times, and I do believe it's good and bad at times. But in this moment, I was very stubborn, and I was like, no, like, I'm not stopping. And she was like, okay. She was like, I think you should stop, and I think you should build back that foundation and really understand, like, what's your plan, who you're selling to, target audience, like, What does it look like buying bulk? Should you do that in the first place? Should you have ready to wear? Should you have a pre-order method? It was just so many different things that she was like coming at me for. And I'm just like, oh, I don't know. And that was the reason she was like, you need to stop and build up that foundation. And so after like going back and forth, I finally said, okay, I'm gonna just stop. So in the time that I ended up stopping, I ended up running into another friend who was a designer as well. And I remember he was like, Ruby, I'll help you with the business plan. So the first mentor was like, this is what you need to do, and then bring it back to me. So once I stopped, I found someone who would actually give me guidance on the business plan, and he pretty much gave me his outline. And he was like, this is what a company he had paid for, I guess, created the business plan for him. But he was like, use this as a reference for yours. And the reference was really just, okay, the competitive analysis, the market intelligence. So even though his industry was totally different, it was still work that I needed to do in my industry with fashion design to figure out, okay, if I'm here in Charlotte, what are other businesses that are doing the same thing as me? How can I have a competitive edge? What is my target audience? So even though he paid for, I guess, a company to do that work for him, on my hand, we didn't have the money to do that. So he was able to give me an outline or the questions that company, gave him, and was like, Ruby, just answer this, but for your industry, for your clothing line. And so in that process, I was able to do that. But before I ended up really going deep into the business plan, he said, I think you should stop reselling and create your own brand. He was like, if you are fine with going and buying other people's stuff, then do that. But he challenged me to figure out how to not only do research for the business plan, but do research on starting my own instead of making a business plan from selling from vendors or reselling from vendors. And so I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, Ruby, this is what you want to do. So even though it wasn't as fast as I thought, like I was going to be able to just be selling all these clothes, these dresses, I was like, I do want to figure out how to create designs that really mimic me. I want to know about the fabric. I want to really know about sizing, and not just take everything from the vendor and plaster it over the website. Like, I want to go through those steps, because not only am I going to be super invested, I'm going to be well versed in what's happening with the brand, and I'll be able to pivot or make changes and know how to, because I've been involved in all the steps, and really talk about the brand from the beginning phases. If you're reselling clothes, and no offense to someone who is reselling clothes, but if you're reselling clothes, it's like you are definitely picking out things that you love, and maybe the sizing is great. But for me, when the mentor of mine just really broke it down, it was just like, okay, there's a lot of things that I don't know. And could I have taken the route to be more knowledgeable on the reselling route? Yes. But I just said, you know what? I'm going to create my own clothing line. And that's where it came down to the name. I went through like a few names in the beginning, like House of Ruby Durham, House of, no. I went through a few names, House of Ruby Durham, Suited by Ruby Durham, and then I remember, let's do Suited by Red. It was a few conflicts with the news, like at the time when I was starting up the brand. Before I launched it, I was still starting kind of the beginning phases while I was on the news, and I remember I couldn't use my full name at the time, so Suited by Red came into play. And I just remember going on social media, and I said, hey y'all, I'm creating some logos for my clothing line, y'all pick. And so I was able to narrow down the clothing line name and logo and look from people on social media. So that was pretty cool, getting the feedback, because we really did get a lot of feedback. And so after that, I just started to research all the things, not only the information that I needed to include in the business plan, but then also the things that I needed to do on the ground. Because while the business plan was great, the vision, the mission, competitive analysis, like all the the things in terms of what is your 3-year, 5-year, what is your overhead, what are your expenses. Like, I was able to narrow all that down. But then it came down to, okay, when I'm doing my expenses or my fixed, variable, etc., how much am I going to charge to make the clothes? What is the price point for the clothes? What is the price point from the sample? What are the things? So at that point, I'm like, girl, we need to find a manufacturer so they can be able to tell me from what I'm trying to design, like, what is it going to take cost-wise for me to design it, but then also create 5 or 10. So I just remember reaching out to a friend. She sells swimsuits, or she has a swimsuit company. And I just said, hey, I need to find a manufacturer. Like, what is your advice? And she gave me a website, and it gave you like list of manufacturers. It was like hundreds of manufacturers. And let me tell you, my butt spent like 2 nights. I went through each one. And really, she said, look for those who are willing to work for emerging designers. Like, they know off bat that you are starting out as a designer. And I remember like taking that advice and looking through the descriptions for the manufacturers, also looking at their website, like the clothes that they're already making for other brands. Like, do I like it? What are their lead times? What is their price points? Like, a lot of websites did have like a little bit of information. And so I narrowed like maybe the list of 300 plus to 3. They were all in New York. And I took a trip. To New York. I made some appointments, and I could only go for not even 24 hours. I literally flew to New York like early that morning and flew back because I could not stay. And so I ended up meeting the 3 in person. They kind of told me their rundown. I got to know them a little bit. I was able to see like their factory, their office, their warehouse, to see how they're making other people's clothes. So after I got back to Charlotte, I just remember not being really sold on one of the manufacturers, and I just ended up running into this woman. I was at this event, and I was sitting, it was a fashion show. I was sitting at a fashion show, and this lady sat beside me, and we just started connecting, just networking. And she was a designer from New York who sold furs. And she had just moved here to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we connected off the bat because I told her, I said, let me tell you, I just took this trip to New York and met with some manufacturers based off of a list that a friend gave me in the industry. And Lord, I didn't narrow down one person. And so I just remember her telling me, go to a trade show. Like, you need to go to a trade show, and there's so many designers, down to manufacturers who will sell buttons that you may want, sell fabric. Like, it's not just the manufacturer who can build it for you, but just other little pieces, zippers, bags, like other things that you'll need like on this journey. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that too. So again, at this point, Magic was in New York. And so I ended up taking a trip. This time I said, we're going to stay one night. Like, let's try to afford to stay one night, because it was like a whole day thing. And I wanted to make sure that the next time I went to New York, I could also go to some fashion fabric stores. And so I just remember being dead. I was like out of breath, but I was walking all over New York. She had recommended I take some trains, some buses to save on some money, because the Ubers are crazy, and I did just that. But it was a crazy one night. It was a crazy one day, one night situation, but we did it. I ended up staying in Philly, and I went to the trade show that next morning, and it was crazy. It was just so much going on, so many different people, so many manufacturers, so much fabric, so many clothing line designers who are reselling clothes. Like, it was just like crazy, but we did it. So I am in New York looking for a manufacturer. I just remember running into this one manufacturer, and we connected right off the bat, and I just knew, okay, I want to start with them. So after I connected with them, we got the ball rolling. I think within like the next week, we scheduled a Zoom call, and they were just like, okay, let's create your first sample. And the best thing about them, they were open to working with me, even though I didn't really know anything and I was going to need a little help along the way. And they just provided me some assurance that, okay, we'll help you, we'll support you, and we'll get you off the ground running. And we'll kind of just make sure you know what we expect and know some of the key words like MOQ, minimum order quantity, and just really guide me through the steps even though they were helping me. So that felt really good to make that relationship. And so I ended up creating one tech pack with them of a set. It was a top and a pant. I said, let's start there and then go from there. So we ended up creating this top and pant, and I just remember them sending me the sample, and I loved it. It fit me so well, fit me great. And so I said, I want to create a line that is extra small to 4X. Like I don't want it to be for petite women because I'm 5 feet tall, about 120 something. And I want to be confident in selling to a woman who is a different size than me, but be so knowledgeable that she's like, girl, I'm buying it, no matter what I'm looking like in front of her. So I just said, we need to create more samples. I love it on me, but we got to make sure it looks great on the sizes that I want to sell to. So I remember that was my first round of samples for me. So I bought a second round of samples, and I bought this sample size run in each size. So the top and the pant, I bought it from extra small to 4X, so one of each. It was somewhere between 300 and 500, if I'm not mistaken. And when I got the samples, I'm like, well, girl, you're gonna need people to try it on. And so one of the mentors recommended that I do a model call. And I'm like, why would I do a model call? Like, I don't want attention just yet. But I needed models. And so she said, you're gonna look back on this and you're gonna be glad you did it, and you're gonna create relationships and experience, like just do it. I just pulled out my phone, I was in Uptown Charlotte, and I just posted model call. Here we go. By Red is having an open model call and fitting this Saturday in Uptown Charlotte. The post ended up doing so well. I ended up finding a space in the Vapa Center in Charlotte, and it was a photography studio, and that's where I held it. And I just called all my friends from the news. I called DJ Chuck T to help me with the music. My mentor was there, my friends, my sister was there, and I said, you know what, let's just do it. And so a lot of girls came out. It was about 30, if I'm not mistaken, 30 girls who came out, and we just did it without knowing like what to expect. Just did it. And I thought I had to close with me because I thought like I would be getting video of them trying on the clothes. But once we really got the setting, I said, you know what, let's just see them walk. Let's have fun. Like the energy was just on a level where let's do like a walk and just see the personality from there, and then do a separate fitting. Turn to your neighbor, say neighbor. Neighbor. You better walk. You better walk. The energy was so hyped at the model call. Like it was like I was so happy. Again, I got out of my own way, trusted the mentor and her advice, and did it. And so after the fashion show, or the model call, after the model call, we ended up narrowing it down to just a few of the girls in different sizes, different shapes, and I invited them to a location to try on the clothes. At that moment, I was like, oh my gosh. The girls who were more petite, more just on the small, medium, extra small size, like everything looked good on them. But when it got to large, extra large, 1X, 2X, 3X, it was like, So the bust, like that was a problem. Some of the buttons were kind of like splitting or just bulging at the breast for some of the women who had bigger breasts. And the taller women, like the pants were way too high water looking. And so I said, you know what? We'll go back to the drawing board. Like I just spent that money, but it was well worth it because it showed me that, okay, if you want to make clothes for different size women, like you're going to have to do the research. You're going to have to figure out how to make it work, because the tall women can't be walking around with high waters, and the women with bigger boobies, like we can't have it bulging. Like it needs to look good on everybody. And so at that time, I called my manufacturer and I said, we're in a little trouble. And so they were going to another trade show. At this time, it was in Vegas. So booked the trip, took my notes from the fitting and the model call and said, how can we make this right? It took about a year for me to get now my 4th round of samples, because at that time I had just created a top and a pant. But I said, you know what, if we're gonna slow down, I wanna create a 5-piece collection, get the sizing right, learn how to make tech packs, because they helped me on the first round of tech packs. I wanna really learn how to get the sizing right, learn how to make the tech packs, and I wanna create 3 more additional pieces for the next sample run, so I really know, like, if it's a dress, if it's a skirt, like if it's a bodysuit, like I want to get the sizing done right, and I want to do it now. So it took about a year for me to go through the process of creating the new tech packs, learning the sizing, and designing a few more pieces for the clothing line. And now, about a year later, I have the 4th round of samples, and they look so good. They look so good. I have like 3 things that I'm like, oh, we need to fix this. But overall, like, I am 90% happy with it. So the 3 things that I'm really like, oh, we gotta fix this, that comes into my OCD. That comes into me wanting it to be perfect. I took the samples to my mentor, and she's like, Ruby, that's a collection. That's a collection. The wait is worth it. And so now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, do I just run with what I have because it looks so good and it's great and it's right on point? Or do I fix those 3 things? Those 3 things and drop when it's fixed. So I don't know which way to go. Should I go with the 4th round of samples as they are, or should I fix the 3 things that I really want to fix for it to be almost near perfect and then drop? My mentor is like, Ruby, just drop. And I'm just like, but the 3 things, like, we have to have those 3 things. And so I'm trying to figure out, am I in my own way again, or should I just go with what I have, because it's never going to be perfect and the audience will tell you what they like. I'm also trying to figure out now, like, do I show the product? I have 5 pieces. Do I narrow it down to 1? Do I narrow it down to 3? Or do I put all 5 out there? Or do I just get on social media and say, hey ladies, I have 5 pieces that I just created for a collection. Rank the top, and that's what I'll drop. It's so many things, but I know this time, like, I have to do research, so I'm not buying a lot of bulk that's gonna sit. So I'm gonna have to do something very quick, but I'm so excited, and it's been a journey, and it's gonna continue to be a journey, but I'm learning so much along the way. So I say all of that to say, whether you want to start your own business or learn something new, I think the key is persistence and patience, not being afraid to take risks, asking for help, and doing it the way you want to do it, but also researching along the way of what has worked with others in that same field, industry, so you can be able to say, okay, this inspired me, let me take action, but in my own way. I appreciate you so much for joining us for this episode of Ruby's Roundtable. I can't wait to continue to just show you all the steps as I'm trying to make it as a singer, a clothing line designer, and also model, and just show you who's helping me, the resources, the tips and tricks that I'm learning along the way. So follow, subscribe, like, comment, give me some feedback on this episode and future episodes so we can keep it rocking and rolling, because if not you, who?